A millionaire arrived at his ex-fiancée's wedding with a homeless woman, and everyone froze. Before the story starts, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The music stopped. And when the music stops in the middle of a $3 million wedding, everyone feels it. The ballroom at the Palmer House Hilton in Chicago was full. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like jewels. White flowers imported from the Netherlands covered every table. Dom Perignon was being poured like water. 300 guests dressed as if they were going to the Oscars. And then, silence. The orchestra simply stopped playing. The violinists still had the bow in the air frozen. The soprano singing Ave Maria choked in the middle of a note because he had just walked in. Ethan Crawford, the most sought-after billionaire in Illinois, owner of half the city's skyscrapers. The man who showed up on the cover of Forbes wearing a hoodie, the kind of man who makes other people feel underdressed just by standing near him. And there he was, in a Tom Ford tuxedo. Hair perfectly tousled, a smile that said he knew exactly the damage he was about to cause. But he wasn't the reason 300 heads turned at the same time. She was. The woman at his side, a red dress? Not the shy red of someone who wants to pass unnoticed. No, it was blood red. Red that says, I came to ruin your party and still look amazing while doing it. The kind of red that should come with a safety warning. Dark brown hair falling in perfect waves over her shoulders. Makeup discreet yet strong, eyes that seemed to hold secrets from entire lives. And a posture. Strange, confident, elegant, but with a slight tremor in the fingers holding a silver clutch. She walked in like a queen, but she breathed like someone 2 seconds away from a panic attack. And then came the first line. She leaned in a little toward Ethan, whispering, but loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear. If I trip in these heels, let's pretend it's part of the choreography, okay? Ethan barely held back a laugh. 2 security guards in black suits tightened their faces. A platinum-haired socialite almost dropped her glass of champagne, and the official wedding photographer, who should have been recording the bride's grand entrance, turned the entire camera toward the door. Because no one, absolutely no one, expected that. Least of all the bride. She stood in the middle of the center aisle, gripping the bouquet of white roses so hard the thorns must have been piercing her hand. The French lace veil fell over her face, but not enough to hide her expression. She was pale. Pale like, I just saw my ex-fiancé walk into my wedding with another woman, because that was exactly what was happening. Beside her, the groom, a businessman named Gregory Whitmore from an old family with even older money, tried to keep his composure, but his bow tie looked as if it were choking him from the inside. Who is she? He whispered tense. The bride, Vanessa, didn't answer. She just kept staring, fixed, as if she were seeing a ghost. And maybe she was. In the middle of the ballroom, near the head table, Eleanor Montgomery let the crystal glass slide from her hand. She didn't even notice. The glass shattered on the Italian marble floor with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. Everyone looked at her. Eleanor was the kind of woman who never lost her composure. 62 years old, but she looked 45. Botox, Pilates, and a skincare routine that cost more than a car. She commanded boardrooms with a blink, intimidated heirs, closed deals while drinking Earl Grey tea. But now she was frozen. The face perfectly made up, but the eyes were wide. As if she had seen something impossible, as if the past had just walked in the front door. And while the entire ballroom watched in a sepulchral silence, Clara, because that was the name she believed she had, walked slowly at Ethan's side. Step by step, heel on marble, click, 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 each sound amplified by the silence. She didn't understand why she was so nervous. Ethan had explained everything. It was simple. You come in with me, we make an impact. My ex has a meltdown, and in an hour we'll be laughing about it over expensive wine. Simple. But then, why did this place feel so familiar? She looked around, the chandeliers, the Greek columns, the hand-painted ceiling. Everything shouted luxury, everything shouted old money, everything shouted a world she didn't belong to. And yet, strangely, it felt like she once had. A wave of dizziness passed through her, quick, like a flash. An image that did not make sense, a voice, a laugh. A man holding her hand when she was little. You'll be the queen of this place someday, my princess. Clara blinked. The image vanished. Hey. Ethan's voice was low and steady beside her. You okay? She forced a smile. Perfect. Just wondering if life insurance covers death by embarrassment. He laughed softly, but she caught the change in his eyes, concern hiding behind amusement. They reached the center of the ballroom. The silence was deafening. 300 people. Not a single sound. Only the collective breath of a shocked elite. Vanessa, the bride, hadn't moved. Her eyes were fixed on Clara. Not on Ethan. On her. As if she knew that face. As if she couldn't possibly know that face. Gregory tried to take her arm. "Vanessa, let's keep going." But she didn't move. Then, out of nowhere, a voice echoed from the back of the hall. "My God!" An older woman, pearls around her neck, her expression horrified. "That can't be." "No, it can't be." The whispers began slowly like a wave. "Who is she? Did you see how Eleanor reacted? She looks like—" "No, impossible." Clara's stomach turned. Something was wrong. Very wrong. She looked at Ethan, confused. "What's happening?" He didn't answer. He just looked at Eleanor, and Eleanor looked back. And in that moment, Clara saw something she had never seen before in another person's eyes. Fear. Pure panic. Eleanor Montgomery, the woman who controlled fortunes, who manipulated destinies, who never ever lost control, was terrified. And Clara had no idea why. The music started again. Suddenly, as if someone had hit a panic button, the orchestra picked up the theme. The soprano cleared her throat and began to sing again. But no one was paying attention to the wedding anymore. Every single person was staring at her. Ethan leaned in and whispered in her ear, "Looks like we just won an Oscar, huh?" She tried to smile, but something inside her was screaming, "This place. I know this place." And as camera flashes began to explode, as guests whispered like they were witnessing the scandal of the century, Clara closed her eyes for just a second. And she heard it. A distant voice. Familiar, but impossible. "Clara, my daughter." Her eyes flew open, her heartbeat racing. But when she looked around, no one was calling her. Only 300 strangers. And a woman in a white dress, pale as death, staring at her as if she had seen a ghost. But before she could understand what was happening in that ballroom, before she could learn why Eleanor Montgomery dropped her glass, before she could discover who the woman in red beside the billionaire truly was, we have to go back. 5 years earlier, and an accident that changed everything. 5 years before, on a road outside Chicago, a Mercedes-Benz had veered off the highway. When the windshield shattered, an entire life was erased with it. The taste of metal was the first thing she felt when she woke up. Then came the pain. The kind that starts at your forehead and spreads through your skull like someone hammering from the inside. She forced her eyes open. Glass everywhere. The windshield was broken, the airbag hung deflated like a ruined party balloon, and the dashboard flashed red lights that didn't help at all. Silence. That heavy kind of silence that comes right after something has gone terribly wrong. She tried to move and felt every muscle protest. The driver's door was crushed inward, twisted as if a giant had squeezed it shut. Outside there was only darkness, tall trees, an empty road, and she was alone, completely alone. She tried to remember anything, what she was doing there, where she was going, who had been driving. But nothing came. It was as if someone had stepped into her mind and wiped it clean, leaving only the echo of a vast emptiness. Then she looked down at her hands, scratched and streaked with dried blood, and saw the necklace, a thin gold chain wrapped around her wrist, almost cutting into her skin from the impact. She carefully untangled it until she could see the pendant. A single letter engraved in gold, M. She frowned, trying to force her memory. M for what? Nothing. Absolutely nothing came. Only one word. One single word floating faintly in her mind. Clara. She said it out loud, testing the sound. Clara. It felt right and wrong at the same time. With effort, she pushed open the passenger door. It creaked, then finally gave way. The cold night air hit her face, and that's when she noticed she was barefoot. She let out a humorless laugh. Lost my memory and my shoes. Perfect day. She started walking down the empty road, each step a new kind of torture for her bare feet. After what felt like hours, lights appeared in the distance. Chicago's Union Station. Clara stumbled inside, steadying herself on the wall so she wouldn't fall, and no one looked. No one stopped. Just another lost soul in Chicago. She found a metal bench and let herself collapse onto it. Closed her eyes for just a second. Hey lady, you fall out of a plane or something? She opened her eyes and found herself staring at a man with a scruffy gray beard, layers of clothes, and a toothless grin. He was holding a sandwich wrapped in foil. Here, still warm. Well, technically it was warm about 4 hours ago. Clara took the sandwich. Thank you. No problem. You look like you fought a bear and lost bad. I don't remember fighting any bear. Oh, so you've got amnesia? He sat beside her. Like those old afternoon movies? I'm not sure I'm anything right now. Where's your family? That simple question hit like a punch to the stomach. I don't know. Clara looked at her hands. I don't remember anything. He patted her shoulder. Rule number 1 on the street. The first day's always the worst. After that, it's just bad, but manageable bad. Inspiring. I try. Days turned to learn the routine. St. Vincent's had hot soup, but smelled like mold. Hope Center had slightly softer beds, but endless lines. Grace Mission had the most boring pastor in the world, but allowed hot showers. She rotated between the three, always with that necklace around her neck. Always with that name on her tongue. Clara. But no last name, no past, no future, only the present. And the present was cold, gray, and sometimes came with watery soup for dinner. On the 20th day, or maybe the 30th, she'd lost track, Clara sat on a park bench when she heard it. Classical music coming from a music store, Chopin, and something inside her broke. She didn't know the name of the piece, didn't know who Chopin was, but she knew every note. And suddenly, she was crying. One day you'll play like that, my princess. Whose voice was that? Clara clutched the necklace tightly, as if the M could mean something. But nothing came. Only the cold, the hunger, the loneliness of not knowing who you are. 3 weeks after the accident that erased Clara from the map, Eleanor Montgomery sat in a private office, playing the role of the perfect widow. But what she was about to discover would test just how far someone could go for money. And the answer? Very, very far. Eleanor Montgomery was not the kind of woman who cried in public. She was the kind who wore black Chanel to funerals, smiled at the right moments, and calculated inheritances while pretending to mourn. And right now, sitting in the Davis Investigations office on Michigan Avenue, she was doing exactly that. Thank you for coming so quickly, Mr. Davis, she said in that smooth, controlled voice. I know it's a difficult time. Davis, a private investigator in his 50s with the face of a man who'd seen too much, opened a brown folder. My condolences, Mrs. Montgomery. I understand you want to close this chapter. Exactly. Eleanor crossed her legs, flawless as always. My stepdaughter disappeared 3 weeks ago. The car was found destroyed. But, she paused, wiping away a non-existent tear. They never found the body. And you'd like me to confirm that officially? Yes, for legal reasons, inheritance, wills, all those terrible bureaucratic things we still have to handle, even in painful times. Davis narrowed his eyes slightly. He'd investigated rich people long enough to know when someone cared more about the money than the mourning. I'll need a few days. I'll check hospitals, shelters, police stations. If she's alive, I'll find her. Perfect. Eleanor opened her Hermes bag and pulled out an envelope. Here's an advance. 20,000. The rest when it's confirmed. Davis took the envelope, weighed it mentally, and nodded. 2 weeks at most. 10 days later, Davis returned. Eleanor was in the Montgomery Mansion's sitting room in Lincoln Park, sipping Earl Grey tea and pretending to read a book on gardening. When the maid announced the investigator, Eleanor's heart quickened. Please let her be dead. Please let her be dead. Davis entered, folder in hand, expression neutral. Mrs. Montgomery. Mr. Davis, please sit. She set her tea aside, trying to look properly nervous. Did you find anything? He opened the folder slowly. I did. Eleanor held her breath. Your stepdaughter is alive. Silence. Eleanor blinked once, twice, then set the teacup on the side table with the care of someone defusing a bomb. Say that again. Davis placed 3 photographs on the table. Clara at Union Station. Clara entering a shelter. Clara sitting on a park bench eating what looked like an old hot dog. Clara Montgomery. Alive. Living on the streets of Chicago. Apparently with total amnesia. She doesn't know who she is. Eleanor picked up the photos with trembling hands. And for a second, just 1 second, she thought about doing the right thing. She thought about calling her husband, saying, Richard, she's alive. Our Clara is alive. She imagined his smile, his relief, his joy. She imagined bringing her stepdaughter home. But then she looked around, the mansion, the expensive paintings, the imported furniture, the bank accounts with 8 digits. All of it would stay hers if Clara remained dead. All of it would go back to Clara if she returned. Eleanor closed her eyes and made her choice. How much do you want to forget you ever saw this? Davis tilted his head, unsurprised, as if he already expected it. $500,000. Done. Eleanor didn't even blink. Half now, half in 6 months. But if I find out you told anyone, I know, I disappear. Davis gave a humorless smile. Not my first time, Mrs. Montgomery. Good. Eleanor picked up her phone. Bank transfer, right now. And the photos? They stay with me, for safety. Wrong. Eleanor extended her hand. Mo, the photos stay with me. You keep the money, and your mouth shut. Davis handed over the photos, and as he left, Eleanor looked at them one last time. Clara. Dirty. Barefoot. Lost. The Montgomery heiress living like a beggar. Eleanor should have felt pity, but all she felt was relief. She walked to the burning fireplace and tossed the photos in, one by one. Clara at the station, Clara at the shelter, Clara on the bench, all turning to ashes. Half an hour later, Eleanor made another call. Miss Carter, this is Eleanor Montgomery. I understand you work as Mr. Davis's assistant and saw something inconvenient at Union Station a few weeks ago. Tense silence on the other end. Mrs. Montgomery. $200,000 for you to forget what you saw permanently. Long pause. I didn't see anything, Mrs. Montgomery. Good girl. Eleanor hung up, and for the first time in 3 weeks, she smiled. A cold, calculated, empty smile. The empire was safe, the fortune was safe, and Clara Montgomery, for all intents and purposes, was dead. That night, upstairs in the mansion, Richard Montgomery was kneeling by the bed, as he had every night since the accident. Hands clasped, eyes closed. Voice low and broken. Lord, I know I've asked this 1,000 times, but if she's still alive, please bring my daughter back, please. I'd give everything I have. He opened his eyes, looking at the framed photo on the nightstand. Clara at 17, smiling. I miss you so much, my princess. A tear slid down his face. He didn't even hear Eleanor come in. Richard, dear, she said softly, you need to rest. The doctor said these strong emotions aren't good for your heart. I can't, Eleanor. I just feel she's still out there, somewhere. Eleanor sat beside him, resting a hand on his shoulder with fake compassion. I know, dear, I know, but it's been 3 weeks. Maybe it's time to accept. Never. Richard shook his head. As long as they haven't found a body, I'll keep believing. Eleanor's grip on his shoulder tightened slightly. Of course, dear. Of course. Inside, she was calculating. How long until he gives up? How long until Clara's memory finally fades? She stood up, smoothing her dress. I'll get your medicine. You need some sleep. Thank you, Eleanor. 5 minutes later, she returned with a glass of water and 2 blue pills. For your heart, dear. Richard took them without question. He always did, because he trusted her. He didn't know those pills weren't for his heart. They were sedatives, tranquilizers, drugs that kept him weak, dependent, controllable. Eleanor watched him swallow, watched his eyes grow heavy, watched him lie down and drift into sleep. Then she left the room. In the dark hallway, far from anyone's eyes, Eleanor smiled again, because she had won. Clara was alive, but lost forever. Richard was under control, and the Montgomery Empire was hers, completely hers. But what Eleanor didn't know was that buried secrets have an irritating habit of resurfacing, and that 5 years later, on a wedding night in Chicago, the past would come knocking, wearing red high heels and a thirst for justice. While Eleanor slept on Egyptian silk sheets and Richard prayed for miracles, Clara was mastering the art of surviving with $3 in her pocket and a questionable sense of humor, and discovering that, apparently, she knew things a homeless woman wasn't supposed to know. 5 years. 60 months. 1,800 days of waking up without knowing who you really are. Clara had gotten used to it. Well, used to it was generous. She had learned to survive, which was completely different. She rotated between 3 shelters in Chicago. St. Vincent's, which had hot soup but smelled like mold and despair. The Hope Center, which had less uncomfortable beds but endless lines. And Grace Mission, where the pastor was the most boring man in the history of mankind, but at least let people take hot showers. And when the shelters were full, there were always cafes. Especially the Starbucks on Michigan Avenue. Clara had discovered a brilliant trick. If you bought a small coffee, the cheapest one, and sat quietly in a corner with a book someone had left behind, no one bothered you for hours. It was like having a free office, with air conditioning, and a bathroom. That November afternoon, her 5th November without memories, Clara was sitting in the corner of Starbucks, with a coffee that had gone cold 40 minutes ago, and a worn-out copy of Pride and Prejudice she had found on a park bench. She was reading softly, in French. Mais on ne pouvait pas comprendre. She stopped, blinked, looked at the book. Wait, why do I know French? A woman at the next table gave her that look. The universal "please don't talk to me" face. Clara ignored it and kept flipping through the pages, now in English, but with that strange feeling that she'd read it before. In another life, in a big house, with a fireplace. She shook her head. Stop it, Clara. You probably just watched the movie version and got confused. But the feeling wouldn't go away. Just like the odd moment last week when she walked past an art gallery and somehow knew, without knowing how, that the painting on display was a fake Monet. Or when she stepped into a restaurant to use the restroom and could instantly tell a Chateau Margaux from a Cheap Merlot just by the smell. Or when she saw someone using the wrong fork and had to hold herself back from correcting them. It was as if there were two Claras. The one living on the streets and the one who had lived somewhere else, somewhere with rules. Etiquette. Money. Another coffee? Clara looked up and saw a new barista. The kind of college kid who was clearly there for the paycheck, not the passion for coffee. No thanks, still working on this one. She lifted her empty cup. He looked at it, then at her, then back at the cup. Ma'am, that's been empty for like an hour. And, well, you either need to buy something else or leave. Clara sighed. Here we go. Look, I bought a coffee. I paid. I'm sitting here quietly reading. I'm not bothering anyone. But store policy doesn't say there's a time limit for drinking the coffee I paid for. Clara crossed her arms. Unless you'd like to show me that policy in writing? The kid turned red. I'll get the manager. Please do. 3 minutes later, the manager showed up. A man in his 40s, tie crooked, with the face of someone who dealt with too many Karens that week. What's the problem? The barista pointed at Clara like she was on the FBI's most wanted list. She's been here for hours with an empty cup and refuses to leave. The manager looked at Clara. Clara looked right back, calm. Did you buy something? I did. Tall Pike Place. $3.45. Here's the receipt if you want to check. She tossed the crumpled paper on the table. The manager glanced at it and sighed. She can stay. But she paid. She can stay. He gave the barista a look that said, I don't get paid enough for this conversation. Go back to the counter. The barista stormed off, and the manager turned back to Clara with a tired half-smile. Sorry about that. He's new. No problem. I get it. Everyone has to deal with difficult people at work. Clara smiled back. Including you, right now. He laughed. Touché. Enjoy your coffee, or what's left of it. When he walked away, Clara exhaled the breath she'd been holding. Small victories. That's what her life was made of now. Small victories and big mysteries. That night, Clara was standing in line for dinner at Grace Mission when she heard it. Classical music. Coming from the old radio Pastor Jerry kept in the kitchen. Chopin. Nocturne Op. 9 No. 2. And something inside her broke. She didn't know the name of the piece, didn't know who Chopin was, but she knew every note, every pause, every rise and fall, and suddenly she was crying, like actually crying. Tears streaming down her face, silent sobs, her whole body shaking. The woman standing behind her in line touched her shoulder. Hey honey, are you okay? Clara wiped her face quickly, embarrassed. I'm fine. Sorry, it's just, this music? I know. Chopin does that to everyone. But it wasn't just that. Clara knew it wasn't. It was a memory, a fragment of something lost. Someone playing that same piece. Delicate hands on the piano. A soft voice humming along. One day you'll play like that, my princess. Clara froze. Whose voice was that? Next. She blinked, coming back to reality. She picked up the tray with the watery stew and hard bread and went to sit in a corner. But the music still echoed in her mind. And for the first time in 5 years, Clara was absolutely certain of one thing. She hadn't always been Clara, the homeless woman. She had been someone important. 2 weeks later, Clara was standing outside a wine shop, not to buy anything, obviously, but because it was raining and the store had a big awning. She stood in front of the window, looking at the bottles when a couple came out arguing. I told you it was Merlot, and I told you it was Cabernet. Clara looked at the bottle they were holding and without thinking said, It's Pinot Noir, Burgundy, 2009. A good year, actually. The couple stopped, looked at her, then at the bottle. The man turned it around. Pinot Noir, Burgundy, 2009. His eyes widened. How did you? But Clara was already gone, her heart racing. How did she know that? How? Clara was about to find out that knowing expensive wines for no reason was the least of her problems. Because that day, in a small cafe on a regular Tuesday, she was going to meet the man who would change everything. and he was having the worst day of his life. Café Borgia on Rush Street was the kind of place where a cappuccino cost $8 and came with a little leaf drawn in the foam. Clara was only there because it had started raining, and the cafe's awning was big enough to cover 3 people and a wet dog. She wasn't planning to go inside, of course not. $8 for coffee? She could eat for 3 days with that. But then she heard the shouting. I said no almond milk. Are you deaf or just incompetent? Clara looked through the window and saw a man in a perfectly tailored suit yelling at a waitress who couldn't have been older than 20. The girl was trembling, holding a cup like it was a grenade about to explode. Sir, I'm so sorry. I can remake it. You think I have time to wait for you to remake it? I have meetings, appointments, more important things to do than wait for an incompetent waitress to get a simple order right. And that's when Clara walked in. Not because she was a hero, not because she was brave, but because she had spent 5 years being treated like she didn't exist, and she recognized that look of humiliation on the waitress's face from a mile away. She crossed the cafe, stopped in front of the man in the suit, and smiled. That polite, icy smile she didn't know how she remembered, but somehow it came naturally. Excuse me. The man looked at her like she was an insect that had just crawled onto his table. Who are you? Someone who needs to remind you that yelling at service workers doesn't make you important, it just makes you an idiot. Complete silence. Even the espresso machine stopped making noise. The man turned red. The kind of red that says, I just got humiliated in front of everyone and I have no idea what to do about it. You? How dare you? Dare what? Tell the truth? Clara crossed her arms. Look, everyone has bad days, but taking it out on a girl earning minimum wage isn't a solution. It's just cowardice dressed up as importance. The waitress was staring at Clara like she had just descended from heaven riding a unicorn. The man opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, and finally, to everyone's shock, let out a breath and sat down. You're right. He rubbed his face. I'm sorry. Really, I had a terrible day, but that's no excuse. He looked at the waitress. I'm sorry. Truly. Can you make the coffee again? And keep the tip? $50 for being patient with an idiot. The waitress blinked, confused but accepted. Clara was about to leave, mission accomplished, when she heard, Hey, wait. She turned around. The man was standing now, and without the anger she noticed. He was incredibly handsome, like magazine cover handsome. Dark, messy hair, blue eyes that looked both sad and tired, and that kind of presence that made people turn twice. Thank you, he said, for putting me in my place. I needed that. No problem. Someone had to do it. Would you like to sit down? Have a coffee? My treat. As an apology for you witnessing my public meltdown. Clara looked at him, then at the door, then back at him. Are you asking me out for coffee? I am. Unless you have somewhere more important to be. Clara almost laughed. Somewhere more important. Like the park bench where she usually spent her afternoons. All right, but only because it's raining. They sat at a small table in the corner, and the man ordered 2 coffees. When they arrived, with those annoying little leaves drawn in the foam, Clara picked up her cup and took a sip, and made a face. What's wrong? He asked. This coffee tastes like late rent. He spit his coffee back into the cup, laughing. Late rent? Seriously? Yeah, like you know it's expensive. You know you shouldn't have bought it, but you did anyway, and now you regret it. She shrugged. Late rent. He laughed again. Not that polite business laugh. A real one. Loud. Genuine. You're hilarious. I'd try. Clara took another sip of her late rent coffee. So, what kind of awful day made you yell at an innocent waitress? His smile faded. My fiancée, well, ex-fiancée now, texted me this morning. She's getting married in 3 weeks, to my best friend. Ouch. Clara winced. That's rough. It's the kind of thing that makes you want to yell at strangers in cafes. Fair enough. She paused for a moment. But are you still going to the wedding? I have to. Our families have known each other for decades. If I don't go, it'll be a scandal, he sighed. But showing up alone, after being replaced, that's humiliating. And that's when Clara saw it, that spark in his eyes. The kind that says, I just had an idea. Unless, he started. Unless what? Unless I don't show up alone. Clara narrowed her eyes. What are you talking about? You, he leaned forward. You'll go with me. Me? You just met me. Exactly, you've got nothing to lose, and I need someone who won't be intimidated by Chicago's elite. Someone brave enough to put arrogant people in their place. He smiled. Someone like you. Clara should have said no. She should have gotten up and walked out. She should have realized this was madness. But then she thought, 5 years living in the shadows, 5 years being invisible. Maybe it was time to be seen. "All right," she said, "I'll go." He blinked, surprised. "Really?" "Really, but on one condition." "What's that?" "You buy me a dress, because I'm not going to a fancy wedding wearing this." She pointed to her worn jeans and old top. "Deal." He held out his hand. "Ethan Crawford." She shook it. "Clara?" "Just Clara? For now." That night, in the dressing room of an expensive store on the Magnificent Mile, Clara looked at her reflection in the mirror. Red dress, styled hair, light makeup. She looked like someone else. Or maybe she looked like who she'd always been. And for the first time in 5 years, she didn't recognize the face in the mirror. Not because of amnesia, but because that person looked too real. She looked like someone who mattered, and that scared her more than any lost memory. Clara had agreed to go to a wedding. What she didn't know was that Ethan Crawford took preparation very seriously. Extremely seriously. And that 3 hours in a beauty salon would reveal more than she was ready to face. "You hired how many people?" Clara stood in the middle of a hotel suite that probably cost more per night than she earned in a year, staring at what could only be described as an army of beauty professionals. There was a makeup artist with a kit the size of a suitcase, a hairstylist with scissors that looked like surgical tools, a manicurist with nail polishes organized by color gradient like a science lab, and a woman with glasses holding a clipboard like a military commander. Ethan was sitting on the couch, sipping coffee and trying not to laugh. "Enough. Ethan, this is a wedding, not the Oscars. For my bruised ego, it's basically the same thing." He shrugged. "Besides, you agreed to the job, now you deal with the consequences." The woman with the clipboard approached, inspecting Clara from head to toe like a renovation project. "Height? About 5'5". "Size? I don't know. It's been 5 years since I bought clothes that weren't secondhand." The woman scribbled something down. "Sensitive skin? No idea. Allergic to any products? Also no idea." The woman sighed, taking off her glasses. "Dear, do you know anything about yourself?" Clara opened her mouth, closed it, then looked at Ethan with a help me expression. He raised his hands. "Don't look at me. You agreed to this." "I hate you." Everyone hates someone at first. It's normal. The makeup artist stepped closer, smiling the way professionals do when they're about to turn your face into a masterpiece. "Shall we begin?" Clara took a deep breath. "All right, but if I leave here looking like a wax doll, I'm suing everyone." 3 hours later, Clara was sitting in the makeup chair with her eyes closed while the artist applied something that smelled like flowers and empty promises. "Done. You can open your eyes." She opened them and froze. The reflection in the mirror wasn't hers. It couldn't be. Her brown hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders. The makeup was subtle but striking. Defined eyes, flawless skin, lips painted in a shade of red that matched the dress perfectly. And the dress. That cursed red dress. Fitted in all the right places. Elegant, sophisticated. The kind of dress that said, "I belong here," without a single word. Clara touched her face, as if checking it was really hers. "Wow," she whispered. "Wow doesn't cover it," the makeup artist said proudly. "You look stunning." Ethan appeared behind her in the mirror, wearing a tuxedo, and when he saw her, he stopped in his tracks. "Wow." Clara turned in the chair. "Good wow or bad wow?" "Wow as in I forgot how to speak." He blinked, trying to process. "You look... wow. Really. Wow. You already said wow. Because there's no other word. You look amazing." Clara felt her cheeks warm. When was the last time anyone had said that to her? 5 years ago? Ever? The clipboard woman showed up holding a shoebox. "Now the shoes." Clara looked at the box as if it were a ticking bomb. "What size?" 8. "How do you know my size?" "I know everything." The woman opened the box, revealing a pair of black stiletto heels, very high ones. Clara's eyes widened. "That's not footwear. That's a weapon." "They're Louboutins." "Doesn't change the fact I could kill someone with them." Ethan laughed. "Do you even know how to walk in heels?" "Technically, no. Emotionally, also no." Clara picked up one of the shoes, inspecting it. "But if I fall wearing these, it's a workplace accident, right? You guys cover compensation?" "Just put them on." Clara slipped on the first shoe, then the second, stood up, wobbled. "Wait." Ethan grabbed her arm before she could fall. "Easy. Breathe." "I am breathing. The problem is whoever designed these hates ankles." She took 1 step, then 2, then 3. "Why do women wear these voluntarily? Because they look beautiful." Beauty doesn't pay for ankle surgery. But then something strange happened. By the fifth step, her body just knew. Her stride became steady, confident, as if she'd worn heels her whole life. Clara stopped, puzzled. Wait, how do I know how to walk in these? Ethan frowned. Didn't you say you didn't? I don't. I mean, my head doesn't, but my body. She took a few more steps, graceful, perfect. My body does. And that's when it came. A flash, quick, intense. A marble staircase. She was walking down in high heels, laughing, a voice in the distance. You were born for this, darling. Clara blinked. The image vanished. You okay? Ethan asked gently. I think so. But she wasn't, because something inside her was screaming, trying to surface. The manicurist took her hand. Let's do your nails? Clara sat, trying to calm her racing heart. As the woman worked, Clara stared at her hands, rough, calloused hands of someone who had survived the streets. But then, another flash. Delicate hands holding a crystal glass. Red nails, a party, classical music, bright lights. Clara? She blinked again, back to reality. Sorry, I'm just tired. A lie. She wasn't tired. She was remembering, slowly, in fragments, like a puzzle being pieced together by invisible hands. When everything was finally done, Clara stood in front of the full-length mirror and didn't recognize herself. Not because she looked different, but because she looked familiar. As if the woman in the mirror was who she was always meant to be. She touched the necklace around her neck, the one with the letter M she never took off. And for the first time, it felt like it belonged there. Ethan adjusted his tie and came closer. Ready? Clara looked at the reflection one more time. The woman in the mirror looked back, and something deep inside her, something buried, forgotten, woke up. Ready, she said. But as they left the hotel for the most luxurious wedding in Chicago, neither of them realized that across town, Eleanor Montgomery had just received a call that made her blood run cold. Mrs. Montgomery, she's been seen. With Ethan Crawford, they're on their way to the wedding. We return to the moment when everything stopped. The music, the chatter, even the collective breath of 300 guests. Because when Ethan Crawford walked through those doors with Clara by his side, the past and the present collided in a way no one was prepared for. The Palmer House Hilton had never been so silent. Clara took her first step onto the Italian marble floor, and the click of her Louboutin heel echoed like a gunshot. Click, then another, click, and another, click, 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 each step magnified by the absolute silence. The orchestra had stopped in the middle of Ave Maria. The violinist still held his bow in the air, frozen like a wax figure. The soprano's mouth was open, but no sound came out. And 300 people, 300 rich, powerful people who thought they had seen everything, were staring at her as if they had just seen a ghost. Clara leaned slightly toward Ethan, whispering without losing her smile, "Why is everyone looking at me like I have two heads?" Ethan kept his smile too. "Because you look stunning, obviously." "Ethan, seriously?" "I don't know either. But relax. Pretend it's part of the show." He gently squeezed her arm. "Breathe, smile, and remember, we're the stars now." "I didn't want to be the star. I wanted to be an extra." Too late. They kept walking, and Clara tried to stay composed, even with hundreds of eyes glued to her. It felt like being in a zoo, only she was the main attraction. And then she saw the bride. Vanessa Whitmore, in a white gown that probably cost more than a car, clutching her bouquet of roses so tightly that the thorns had likely pierced her hand. The French lace veil fell over her face, but not enough to hide her expression. She was pale. The kind of pale that said, "I just watched my worst nightmare come true in high definition." Beside her stood the groom, Gregory Whitmore, perfectly combed blonde hair, a five-figure suit, posture of a man born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He was trying to stay calm, but his bow tie looked like it was strangling him. "Who is she?" he whispered to Vanessa, tense. Vanessa didn't answer. She couldn't. She just kept staring, as if she knew that face, as if she couldn't possibly know that face. But it wasn't the bride who reacted the worst. It was Eleanor Montgomery. She was seated near the head table, wearing a black Chanel dress, pearls around her neck, hair in a flawless bun, the very picture of elegance and control. But when Clara entered the ballroom, Eleanor let her crystal glass slip from her hand. It hit the floor and shattered. Dom Perignon spilled across the marble like liquid gold blood. Eleanor didn't even notice. She was frozen, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, her perfectly made-up face now white as paper, as if she had just seen the dead come back to life, because that's exactly what was happening. The woman beside her, A platinum-haired socialite with a diamond necklace touched her arm. "Eleanor, dear, are you all right?" Eleanor didn't respond. She couldn't. Her hands trembled. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear her own pulse in her ears. No, 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 no. This isn't happening. She's dead. She's supposed to be dead. But Clara wasn't dead. Clara was there, alive, radiant. Walking through the ballroom as if she belonged in that world. As if she had always belonged. Clara kept walking beside Ethan, unaware of the chaos she was causing. She just knew everyone was staring and it was starting to get awkward. "Ethan," she whispered, still smiling. "I think we just caused a little scene." "Little?" He glanced around at the frozen ballroom. "Sweetheart, we basically stopped time. Don't call me sweetheart. We met 3 days ago. It's part of the performance. Stay in character." "I hate you." "We've established that." They reached the center of the ballroom and Ethan stopped. He turned to Clara, smiling like he was having the time of his life. "Looks like we just won the Oscar," he whispered. Clara almost laughed. Almost. But then she felt it. That strange sensation again, as if she had been there before. That ballroom, those chandeliers, those columns, that painted ceiling. She looked around slowly, and everything felt familiar, like a memory. But it couldn't be, or could it? A flash, quick, a party. She was little, holding a man's hand. "One day you'll dance here, my princess." Clara blinked. The image was gone, but the feeling remained. Then from the other side of the room, a voice. My God. It came from an older woman in the third row, wearing pearls and a horrified expression. "Isn't that? No, it can't be." The murmurs started, slowly, like waves. "Who is she? Did you see how Eleanor reacted? She looks like no. Impossible. But look at her face. Montgomery. She has the Montgomery face." Clara felt her stomach twist. Montgomery? Who was Montgomery? She looked at Ethan, confused. What's happening? Ethan was confused now, too. He had expected to make an impression, to make his ex-fiancée regret it. But this was something else. This was fear, panic, as if Clara wasn't just some random date, as if she were someone. The music came back, suddenly, like someone had hit the emergency button. The orchestra picked up the theme again, the soprano started to sing, and life went on. But no one was paying attention to the wedding anymore. Everyone was staring at Clara. And Clara, completely lost, could only think of one thing. Why does this place feel so familiar? Why are these people looking at me like that? And why does that woman, Eleanor Montgomery, look like she's about to faint? Ethan touched her shoulder, bringing her back. "Hey, are you okay?" I don't know." Clara took a deep breath. "I just feel like I know this place." "What do you mean?" "I can't explain it, but it's like I've been here before." And while she said that, across the ballroom, Eleanor Montgomery stood up on trembling legs. She grabbed her purse and left, quickly, almost running, because Eleanor knew exactly what was happening. The ghost she had buried 5 years ago had just returned. And this time, it wouldn't disappear so easily. The party went on. The music resumed. People pretended everything was normal. But Clara was about to find out that buried memories don't stay quiet forever, and that some ghosts from the past have first names, last names, and a very, very nervous stepmother. Half an hour after her grand entrance, Clara was standing beside a table of ridiculously expensive hors d'oeuvres, trying to understand how that was considered food. "Is this caviar or hair gel?" she asked, holding up a tiny cracker. Ethan, standing next to her with a glass of champagne, chuckled softly. "Iranian caviar, $200 a spoonful." $200 for this? Clara stared at the canapé in disbelief. "I could eat for a week on $200. You know, real food. Welcome to the world of the rich, where less is more, and more costs a fortune." Clara popped the canapé into her mouth, chewed, and made a face. "Tastes like rotten ocean." "It's supposed to taste like that. It's sophisticated." Sophisticated is a nice word for disgusting. Ethan was about to reply when a woman approached. Mid-50s, gold dress a little too tight, diamond necklace worth more than most apartments, and that fake smile that always meant fresh gossip. "Ethan, darling," she air-kissed near his cheeks. "What a surprise to see you here, and with company." Her eyes slid toward Clara like an airport scanner. "And who's the lucky one?" "Clara, this is Patricia Vanderbilt." "Patricia, Clara." Patricia extended a hand, long red nails like dragon claws. "Lovely to meet you, dear. Are you new in town?" Clara shook her hand firmly. "Depends on what you call new. I've lived here for 5 years." "Oh," Patricia smiled, but it was a shark smile. "And what do you do, dear?" Ethan opened his mouth to step in, but Clara was faster. I'm an urban survival specialist. Freelance. Patricia blinked. Urban survival? Yes, like Bear Grylls, but with less jungle and more asphalt. Ethan almost spit out his champagne. Patricia couldn't decide whether to laugh or be offended. She went with offended. How interesting. She turned to Ethan. Ethan, darling, may I speak with you for a moment? Actually, it'll just take a second. Patricia was already pulling him by the arm. Clara was left alone at the table with the $200 appetizers, holding a champagne glass she didn't even remember picking up. And that's when it started. A sound. Distant, familiar. Glass shattering, metal twisting, a scream. Clara blinked. The sound was gone. She looked around. The party carried on. Music, laughter, conversation. But then it came again. The crash, the pain, the darkness. She gripped the glass tightly, trying to focus. I'm fine, it's just my head, I'm tired. But it wasn't just exhaustion, it was memories, trying to come back, pushing, pulling, screaming to be heard. Clara took a step toward the side hallway, looking for a quieter place when she heard a voice behind her. Excuse me. She turned and came face to face with Eleanor Montgomery. The woman was pale, sweating, but still forcing that polite smile she'd probably spent years perfecting. I'm sorry to bother you. I just couldn't help noticing you. Are you new here? Clara felt something strange, a shiver, like her body recognized something her mind couldn't grasp. Yes, sort of. Eleanor took a step closer, her eyes scanning every feature of Clara's face, as if searching for something specific. You remind me of someone. Yeah, Clara forced a smile. I have one of those generic faces. Everyone says that. No, it's not generic. Eleanor was starting to get nervous now. Her hands trembled slightly. What's your last name? Why? Just curious. Clara narrowed her eyes. Something about that woman made her uneasy. Pure instinct. Danger. I don't have a last name. Eleanor blinked. What do you mean, you don't have one? Exactly what I said. I don't have a last name. Clara crossed her arms. And honestly, you're being a little invasive for someone who just met me. Eleanor turned red, opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. But before she could finish, a waiter passed by carrying a tray and announced loudly, French champagne, courtesy of the Montgomery family. And it was like a bomb went off inside Clara's head. Montgomery. The sound of the name echoed, repeated, exploded. Then the images came, all at once. A man holding her hand, you're a Montgomery, my princess. Never forget that. A car, rain, shattering glass, a broken necklace on the ground, a voice shouting, Clara. Darkness. Clara staggered. The champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Hey, Ethan appeared out of nowhere, grabbing her arm. Clara, are you okay? She wasn't. The world was spinning. The lights were too bright, the sounds too loud. I need air. Okay, let's get you out. But she couldn't take a single step. Her legs gave out, and Clara fainted. Right there, in the middle of the most expensive wedding in Chicago, in Ethan Crawford's arms. The last thing she saw before everything went black was Eleanor Montgomery's face. Pale, terrified, as if she had just seen the biggest mistake of her life come back to haunt her. When Clara woke up, she was lying on a leather sofa in a private room inside the hotel. Ethan was kneeling beside her, holding her hand. Hey, welcome back. Clara blinked, confused, trying to focus. What happened? You fainted. Like really fainted. I thought you were dead. I'm not dead, I just blacked out. Why? Clara stayed silent, because she didn't know how to explain it. How could she explain that hearing one name, Montgomery, had made 5 years of buried memories explode in her mind all at once? How could she explain that she was certain, absolutely certain, that name meant something, that she knew that name, that maybe, just maybe, that name was hers? Ethan touched her face, worried. Clara, what's going on? She looked at him, and for the first time she told the truth. I think my name isn't just Clara. I think my name is Clara Montgomery. Clara had just spoken the name that would change everything. Montgomery. And while Ethan was still processing that bombshell, her mind was about to dump 5 years of buried memories all at once, like a forced phone update, only much, much more painful. Ethan froze for a full 3 seconds, just staring at her as if she'd said she was from another planet. Montgomery? He repeated slowly. Clara Montgomery? I think so. Clara pressed her head, which was throbbing like a fire alarm. I don't know. When I heard that name, something exploded inside. Exploded like, metaphorically, or... Ethan, Sorry, panic mode activated. He got up, pacing back and forth like a trapped animal. Okay, breathe. Let's process this. Montgomery, the Montgomery family, one of the richest families in Illinois, owners of half the downtown Chicago real estate, and you think... But before he could finish, Clara groaned and pressed her temples hard, because the images were coming back, and this time they weren't fragments, they were memories. Complete ones. A man, gray hair, kind smile, holding her hand as they walked through a huge garden. You're my princess, Clara, and one day, all this will be yours. A woman, blonde, beautiful, playing the piano. Chopin. Play with me, sweetheart, like this. See, you were born for this. A party, lights, music. She was wearing a blue dress, dancing, laughter, happiness, and then rain, night. A car. Watch the curve, Clara. The wheel turning too fast, tires skidding, the impact, glass shattering, darkness. Clara gasped, opening her eyes, tears streamed down her face. I remember, she whispered, her voice breaking. I remember everything. Ethan knelt in front of her, holding her hands. What do you remember? My father, Richard Montgomery. He used to take me to see the buildings he designed, said one day I'd run everything. More tears. My mother. She died when I was 10, cancer. After that, it was just me and him. Clara, and then he married again. Her voice went hard. Eleanor, she seemed nice at first, but then she changed, became cold, calculating. I always felt like she only wanted the money. Ethan tensed. Eleanor Montgomery? Yes. Clara looked at him, her eyes red. The woman who spoke to me today, at the salon. She is my stepmother. Wait, that woman? The one who ran out when you fainted? Heh. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, processing. Okay. So you are Clara Montgomery, daughter of Richard Montgomery, and Eleanor is your stepmother. And you disappeared 5 years ago? In the accident. Clara touched the necklace at her neck. I remember now. I was on my way home, driving alone. It was pouring. I lost control on the curve. The car went off the road, and you lost your memory. Completely. She let out a humorless laugh. I woke up in the middle of the road not knowing who I was, and I spent 5 years living on the streets while her voice broke, because another memory was coming. A voice. On the phone, days after the accident. Eleanor. Yes, I know she is alive, but no one else can know. No one. Pay the private investigator, pay the assistant. I don't care how much it costs. She cannot come back. Clara's eyes widened. Oh my God. What is it? She knew. Clara's voice came out in a horrified whisper. Eleanor knew I was alive. From the start, she found me and decided to let me disappear. Silence. Ethan went white. What? She left me on the streets, on purpose. Clara was shaking now, while my father was looking for me, while he cried, while he prayed for me every night. She knew. Ethan couldn't finish. There was no word for that. Clara rose from the sofa, staggering a little. Ethan grabbed her arm. Hey, take it easy, you just fainted. I need water. Okay, water, I have some. He took a bottle of sparkling water from the mini fridge and offered it. Here, French sparkling water. The official medicine for nervous billionaires. Clara took the bottle, looked at him, and for the first time in 10 minutes let out a laugh. You're ridiculous. I know, but I made you laugh. He smiled, relieved. Look, I know this is a lot, but we'll fix this. How? Clara took a sip of the expensive water. My stepmother literally left me to die. She hid from everyone that I was alive. She's probably controlling my father and the family fortune. Another humorless laugh. How do we fix that? By doing what rich people do best. Ethan crossed his arms, that dangerous glint in his eyes. Well-planned revenge. Clara was about to reply when they heard it, knocking at the door. Hard. Urgent. Ethan and Clara exchanged glances. Stay here? He said, going to the door. He opened it a crack, and came face to face with a man in a black suit. Security. Mr. Crawford, sorry to bother you, but Mrs. Montgomery is looking for the young woman who fainted. She insists on speaking with her, says it's urgent. Ethan looked back at Clara. She was standing now, firm, her eyes still red, but her posture different. She was no longer the lost homeless woman. She was Clara Montgomery. And she was furious. Tell her, Clara said, her voice icy, that I accept. Ethan closed the door and turned to her. Are you sure? Because 5 minutes ago you fainted, and... I spent 5 years not knowing who I was, 5 years sleeping in shelters, eating at soup kitchens, being treated like invisible. Clara adjusted the red dress, the dress that now made everything make sense. While she lived in my house, spent my family's money, and kept my father doped so he wouldn't look for me. Wait, doped? Another memory. Clara closed her eyes. Eleanor putting pills in a glass of water. For your heart, dear. But they were not heart medicine, they were sedatives. Clara opened her eyes. She's poisoning him, slowly, keeping him weak, dependent. And I'm going to stop it, now. Clara Montgomery had spent 5 years being invisible. Now it was time to be impossible to ignore. And with Ethan Crawford at her side, a billionaire with contacts everywhere, Eleanor was about to find out that burying a living heiress wasn't as easy as it seemed. 3 days after the wedding, Clara sat in a conference room on the 47th floor of Crawford Tower, staring at a pile of documents that made her head ache just to look at. "Explain it again," she said, rubbing her temples. "Why do I need to understand corporate law before I destroy my stepmother?" Ethan sat on the other side of the table, surrounded by 3 lawyers who looked like they had sold their souls for Harvard diplomas. "Because," he explained patiently, "you can't just show up and shout, 'Surprise, I'm alive.' Eleanor will say you're an imposter. She'll demand a DNA test. She'll drag it through the courts for years. Then we'll do the DNA test. It takes weeks to get the results, and in that time she'll destroy every piece of evidence. Burn documents, pay off witnesses, and your father will keep being poisoned." Clara tensed. "Okay, fair point. So what's the plan?" One of the lawyers, a man named Jefferson, with gold-rimmed glasses and a tie that probably cost more than a car, leaned forward. "The plan, Miss Montgomery, is to build a case before you go public. We need solid proof that Eleanor knew you were alive, evidence of bribery, forgery, and, if possible, proof that she's been medicating your father without proper medical authorization. And how do we get that?" Ethan smiled, that dangerous smile. "By doing what rich people do best, corporate espionage disguised as networking." 2 days later, Clara was at a charity dinner at the Four Seasons, wearing a black dress Ethan insisted was discreet, but definitely wasn't. "I look like a movie spy," she whispered to him as they entered the ballroom. "You are a spy, technically. I'm a resurrected heiress trying not to be recognized while investigating my stepmother. That's another category. Details. The goal for the night was simple. Get close to Davis, the private investigator Eleanor had hired 5 years ago. Ethan had found out the man would be at the dinner, and that he had a weakness for expensive whiskey and flattery. Clara spotted Davis near the bar. 50s, wearing a suit that had seen better days and with the posture of a man who thought he was smarter than everyone else. Perfect. She approached, grabbing a glass of wine from a waiter's tray. "You're Davis, right? The investigator?" He looked at her, intrigued. "Depends who's asking." "Someone who can pay well for information," Clara smiled. "I've heard you're the best with complicated cases." His ego swelled like a balloon. "I do have a reputation. What are you looking for?" "Information on the Montgomery family, specifically a case from 5 years ago." Davis stiffened, his eyes narrowed. "Who sent you?" "No one. I'm just curious." Clara took a casual sip of wine. "Rumor is, the missing daughter might not be so missing after all." He went pale. I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do." Clara leaned closer. $500,000 is a lot of money to forget someone, isn't it? Davis swallowed hard, sweating. "How did you?" "I know a lot of things, including that Eleanor Montgomery paid you to stay quiet about Clara Montgomery being alive." Clara smiled, but it was a cold smile. "The question is, how much will it take for you to stop being quiet?" The next morning, Clara and Ethan were in his office when Jefferson walked in carrying a box of files. "We got it." Ethan stood. "Everything?" "Everything. Bank records showing transfers from Eleanor to David and his assistant. Forged documents she signed as her husband's legal proxy. And the best part? Jefferson pulled out a folder. Fake medical prescriptions. Eleanor's been buying sedatives under the names of doctors who don't even exist." Clara's stomach turned. "She's really poisoning him." "Technically, it's not poison, it's prescription medication, but the dosage and frequency are enough to keep someone compliant." Jefferson slid the folder toward her. "With this, we can prove not only that she hid you, but also that she's committing medical abuse." Clara looked down at the papers. Then at Ethan. "When do we go public?" "In 3 days, at the annual Montgomery Foundation dinner." Ethan crossed his arms. "Your father always attends. Chicago's entire elite will be there, and the press." "Perfect." Clara closed the folder. "Let's finish this." 2 days before the dinner, Clara did something she knew she shouldn't. She went to the Montgomery mansion. She didn't go inside, just stood across the street, hidden behind a tree, looking at the glowing windows. And then she saw him. Richard Montgomery, her father. He was sitting by the library window, holding a book but clearly not reading, just staring ahead, his expression empty and tired. He looked older, thinner, more broken. Clara felt her chest tighten. "Dad," she whispered, knowing he couldn't hear her. Then Eleanor appeared, entering the library with a tray, a glass of water, pills. Clara saw her clearly, handing him the pills. "For your heart, darling." Richard took them without question, and Clara had to cover her mouth to keep from screaming. Ethan appeared beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Let's go. We can't risk being seen." "She's killing him," Clara said, her voice breaking, slowly, "and he doesn't even know it." "I know, but in 2 days this will all be over, I promise." Clara looked out the window one more time. At the father who wouldn't recognize her now. At the father who had cried for her every night. At the father who still believed she was dead. "I'll bring you back, Dad," she whispered. "I promise." And as she turned to leave, she didn't see it. She didn't see Richard looking out the window, straight at where she had been, with a confused expression as he'd seen someone familiar. The annual Montgomery Foundation dinner was the most anticipated event in Chicago. But that night, no one was prepared for the main course. Revenge served cold, with a side of justice, and a resurrected heiress for dessert. The grand ballroom at the Drake Hotel was packed. 400 members of Chicago's elite, journalists, cameras, flashes bursting everywhere. And at the center of it all, seated at the main table, was Eleanor Montgomery. She was flawless. A black Valentino gown, Mikimoto pearls, hair in a perfect bun, a rehearsed smile fixed on her face like a porcelain mask. Beside her sat Richard Montgomery, thinner than before, eyes tired but present, because Eleanor couldn't skip her family's own charity event without raising suspicion. Eleanor was in the middle of a conversation with a senator when she felt it, that sensation, the one of being watched. She looked around, uneasy, and then she saw it. The double doors at the back of the ballroom opened, and Clara walked in. Not the Clara from the streets. Not the lost, confused Clara. Clara Montgomery. In a red dress, the same one from the wedding, hair loose in perfect waves, posture tall, confident. Beside her was Ethan Crawford, in a tuxedo, wearing a smile that said, "I know exactly what I'm doing." The entire ballroom fell silent. The kind of silence that meant, we just saw something that shouldn't be possible. Eleanor dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the floor. Again. "No," she whispered, pale. "No, no, no." Richard looked toward the door, frowning in confusion. "Eleanor, who is that?" But he didn't finish, because something inside him recognized her. The face, the way she walked, the smile. "Clara," he whispered, disbelief in his voice. Eleanor gripped his arm tightly. "Richard, no, that's not." "Clara?" His voice echoed across the ballroom. Everyone turned. Clara stopped in the middle of the room and looked straight at her father, and smiled. That same smile he'd seen 1,000 times. The one he had dreamed of for 5 years. "Hi, Dad." Richard stood up so fast that his glass fell too. It shattered, but no one cared. "Clara? You're how?" He took one step, then another, and then he ran. He crossed the ballroom, stumbling over his own feet, and pulled her into a hug so tight she almost lost her balance. He was crying, really crying, sobbing, holding her as if she might disappear again. "You're alive. My God, you're alive. I knew it. I always knew. I never stopped looking." "I know, Dad." Clara was crying too now. "I know." The entire ballroom was watching. Cameras rolling, reporters whispering. No one understood what was happening, but everyone knew it was big. Then Ethan stepped forward. "Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ethan Crawford, and I apologize for interrupting the dinner, but I think everyone deserves to know the truth about what really happened to Clara Montgomery over the past 5 years. Eleanor stood abruptly, panicked. "Ethan, what do you think you're—" "The truth, Eleanor." Ethan turned to her, eyes cold. "Something you've hidden very well, until now." He gave a small nod, and Jefferson, the attorney, appeared with a projector. A large screen lit up at the back of the ballroom. The first image appeared, a bank transfer from Eleanor to Davis, the private investigator. $500,000, Ethan narrated, as if he were giving a boardroom presentation. Paid by Eleanor Montgomery to private investigator Davis 3 days after Clara's accident. With an interesting note in the memo, "Silent services." Gasps filled the room. Eleanor went white, trembling. This is forgery. You can't." "We can, and there's more." The next image appeared, a transcript of Eleanor's conversation with the investigator's assistant. Here we have Eleanor instructing the assistant to forget seeing Clara alive at Union Station for $200,000. More murmurs, louder this time. Angrier. Richard released Clara and turned to Eleanor, horrified. Eleanor? What is this? Richard, I can explain. Then explain. He stepped toward her. Explain why you paid someone to stay quiet about my daughter being alive. I was protecting you. Protecting? Richard shouted, and the entire ballroom went silent again. You left my daughter on the streets while I cried for her every night, while I begged God to bring her back. And you knew? Eleanor was crying now, but not tears of regret. They were tears of despair, the kind that come from someone who knows they've lost. I did what was necessary. Necessary for what? Clara stepped forward. To keep control of the money? To get rid of the inconvenient stepdaughter? Eleanor glared at her with such hatred it looked like she might burst into flames. You don't understand. You never did. I built this empire. You didn't build anything. Clara crossed her arms. You just married the right man and waited for me to disappear so you could take it all. Ethan gave another signal. The next image appeared, the fake medical prescriptions. And to make sure no one found out, Ethan continued, Eleanor began drugging Richard with unprescribed sedatives, keeping him weak, dependent, easy to control. Richard staggered as if he'd just been punched. The pills said they were for my heart. They were to keep you quiet, Clara shouted, her voice breaking. She was poisoning you, Dad. Two police officers entered the ballroom. Ethan had notified them beforehand. Of course, Eleanor Montgomery, one of them said, taking out the handcuffs. You are under arrest for fraud, bribery, forgery, and unauthorized medical administration. Eleanor tried to run, literally tried to run, but she tripped on her own high heel and fell. Right there, on the floor, in front of 400 people and 20 cameras. And Clara, even through her tears, even furious, couldn't hold it back. She let out a short, bitter laugh. The lady forgot her mask at home today. The officers lifted Eleanor off the floor and cuffed her. She looked at Clara one last time, pure hatred in her eyes. You'll regret this. No, Clara shook her head, but you will. And as Eleanor was led away by the police, flashes going off everywhere, Richard pulled his daughter into his arms again, this time, to never let go. But in the middle of the embrace, Clara whispered something only he could hear. Dad, there's something I need to tell you. About the man who helped me come back. And Richard looked over at Ethan Crawford, standing there with that quiet smile, and he understood. His daughter hadn't just come back. She'd come back with someone. 6 months after the scandal that stopped Chicago in its tracks, the Palmer House Hilton was about to host another unforgettable event. But this time, there would be no evil stepmother, no long-lost heiress, and no live arrests. This time, it would be just love. And maybe a touch of questionable humor. Clara stood in front of the bridal suite mirror, staring at her reflection and trying not to laugh. I can't believe I'm doing this again. Her best friend, Sophie, whom she'd reunited with after getting her memory back, was adjusting her veil and laughing. Technically, last time you were a fake date in a revenge scheme. Now you're the real bride. Small difference. Small, Clara repeated sarcastically, like the difference between a hurricane and a light breeze. Sophie stepped back, admiring the dress. It was simple. Elegant. No excess, no sparkle. Exactly what Clara had asked for after 5 years of having nothing and 6 months of dealing with the press losing their minds over her. You look beautiful, like Ethan's definitely going to cry at the altar, beautiful. If he cries, I'm going to laugh. Then the ceremony becomes a comedy. Perfect. Fits you two perfectly. Clara looked down at the necklace around her neck, the one with the letter M, restored, polished, shining like new. She touched the pendant, feeling its weight, not the physical one, but the meaning it carried. Memory, family, survival. Mom, she whispered softly, looking up as if her mother could hear her from somewhere. I know you're not here, but I think you'd like him. He's kind of an idiot sometimes, but a good one. Sophie placed a hand on her shoulder. She's watching, I'm sure of it. Clara blinked the tears back. Okay, enough drama, let's get married before I change my mind. You're not changing your mind. No, but Ethan might. He still has time to run. Downstairs in the same ballroom where everything had started 6 months ago, Ethan was trying not to sweat through his tuxedo. Man, relax, said Marcus, his best friend and best man. You look like you're about to faint. I'm not gonna faint, I'm nervous. Why? You literally faced her evil stepmother, exposed her in front of Chicago's elite, and saved the heiress. Marriage is nothing compared to that. It's different. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Last time I had a plan. Now I just have feelings. Marcus laughed. Welcome to marriage, my friend. Richard Montgomery appeared, adjusting his tie. He looked different now, stronger, more alive. Without Eleanor's sedatives, he was himself again, the father Clara remembered. Ethan, he said, placing a hand on his shoulder. Can I talk to you for a second? Of course, sir. They stepped aside, and Richard gave him that serious look fathers have right before the talk. I just want to thank you for everything, for finding my daughter, for believing in her when no one else did. Sir, with all due respect, I didn't do any of this for gratitude. Ethan smiled. I did it because the first time I met Clara, she called me out in the middle of a crowded cafe, and I knew right then and she was special. Richard laughed quietly, genuinely. She always was, since she was a child. He grew serious again. Take care of her, because if you don't, I'll personally. I know, and I will. Ethan extended his hand. I promise. Richard shook it firmly. This time, he said with a half smile, she's in the right hands. The music started, Pachelbel's canon in D. The doors opened, and Clara walked in. The ballroom looked different now, newly restored, white flowers everywhere, soft lights, only 50 guests, close family and true friends. No elite crowd, no cameras, just love. Ethan watched her walk down the aisle beside her father and felt his chest tighten. She was breathtaking. And when she got close enough for him to hear, she whispered, If I trip, pretend it's part of the choreography. Ethan laughed, loud and genuine. Everyone else laughed too. Richard placed his daughter's hand in Ethan's and whispered softly, Take care of her. With my life, Ethan replied. The officiant, a kind man in his 60s with round glasses, began the ceremony. We're gathered here today to celebrate the union of Clara Montgomery and Ethan Crawford, two people who, against all odds, found love in the middle of chaos. Clara looked at Ethan and whispered, Chaos is a polite way to say total disaster. Ethan whispered back, I prefer thrilling adventure. You're ridiculous. And you love me anyway. Unfortunately. The officiant smiled. He had clearly heard them. Ethan, would you like to say your vows? Ethan took a deep breath. Clara, when we met, you were wearing thrift store clothes, drinking coffee that cost half your daily budget, and calling me an idiot in a packed cafe. Laughter filled the room. And I knew then that you were the most incredible person I'd ever met. You're strong, brave, funny, and you have a questionable sense of humor that matches mine perfectly. More laughter. I promise to make you laugh every day, to support you in everything, and never, ever take you to another ex's wedding as my fake date. Clara laughed through her tears. Clara, your vows? She held Ethan's hands, looking into his eyes. Ethan, you found me when I was lost, not just physically but emotionally. You gave me hope when I had none. You fought for me when no one else would. Her voice trembled. And you made me believe I was worthy of love, even when I was stubborn, sarcastic, and had terrible taste in coffee. Laughter again. I promised to love you, to annoy you on purpose sometimes, and always remind you that you first met me as a homeless woman, so you can't complain about my fashion choices. Ethan laughed too, wiping away his tears. The officiant smiled. Then, by the power vested in me by the state of Illinois, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ethan, you may kiss the bride. Ethan pulled Clara close. This time, he whispered, I brought the right bride. This time, she whispered back, I came by choice. And they kissed, and the room erupted in applause. Later at the reception, Clara was dancing with her father when he said, Your mother would be proud. Clara looked at him, eyes glistening. You think so? I know so, he smiled. She always knew you were special, even as a little girl. She used to say, that girl is going to change the world. I didn't change the world, Dad. I just survived. Exactly. He kissed her forehead. And sometimes, surviving is the bravest thing we can do. Clara hugged her father tightly. And for the first time in 5 years, she felt truly home. Not in a place, but with the right people. And that was all she needed. And so ends the incredible journey of Clara Montgomery, the heiress who lost everything, survived the impossible, and regained not only her identity, but also true love. From homeless to millionaire, from lost to found, from alone to loved. A story of redemption, justice, and second chances. Now I want to hear from you. What did you think of Clara's transformation? Were you rooting for her from the start, or were you surprised by the twists? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story? Tell us what you loved most. Was it the romance, the epic revenge against Eleanor, or that emotional reunion with her father? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to get more emotional, funny, and twist-filled stories like this one. See you in the next one.